Hello viewers, so today we have amongst us two very special guests from one of the top institutions across the United States. Ms. Cori, Executive Director of International Admissions at Sacred Heart University, and Mr. Victor Finch, who happens to be the Director of International Admissions at Saginaw Valley State University. Welcome ma'am, welcome sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How are you?
Fine, thank you. A little tired. It's a long trip, but ready to go.
Ma'am, it's been your first time in India?
No, no, I've been many times. Many times, I don't even know how many times, but several times, yes, throughout India.
Right, so just before this official conversation, I had a word with Victor and I got to know that he's been visiting India for 9 years now. When was your first trip in this country?
Probably around that time. I've known Sonal Shal, the owner of Kanan, since 2007, she reminded me last night.
Almost
So-
2 decades now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Such a long journey. So basically we'll try and keep this conversation as something which happens to be quite engaging, quite informative for a lot of students that even you've met inside, and this is just a tip of the iceberg. There are millions of students in India who are aspiring to study at the top US institutions, but the current set of changes has created certain doldrums in their minds as well. So just a few questions, and we would want your deepest possible insights into what's going on currently. So I'll ask a question to both of you first. How should a student visualize his F1 opportunity in the US? How can he maximize that opportunity once he gets it in the US?
The whole experience of arriving in the United States to study actually happens way before they arrive in the United States. I would say it starts today with so many of the students who are coming to visit to learn about different institutions, because today I'm talking with a lot of students about what they think their future might be, and going through the application process is a little bit down the road, and then arriving on campus really starts with what they're thinking about today and getting involved when they arrive.
Right.
So arriving, achieving your visa, attaining your visa is such an exciting time for a student.
True, true.
But I would like for them to visualize being actively engaged before they even arrive, so that when they arrive on campus, they're ready to be actively engaged in the classroom, be actively engaged outside of the classroom, and make the most of it. So it's a big question to start with so many, I think, the possibilities, and just taking advantage of every opportunity when you land on your campus, every opportunity. Get involved, go to a show, go to a basketball game, go to an ice hockey game, plan to meet with your faculty, plan to learn from others, other students and all, and then maybe even join a club, an organization, make the best of your time there. Go to the Career Center soon, right away. Learn about what they do and what their role is in helping them in the future.
Wonderful insight. Victor, what's your take?
I really agree with everything that she said, but I think, students today have to really be mindful of what degree they want to study. Not really so much what their parents want them to study, but what they want to study. And I think young students that we talk to today that are 18, maybe 17 years old, they're already thinking they want to stay in the United States when they graduate. Well, nobody has a crystal ball. So you don't know what's going to happen 4 or 5 years down the road. But we do know from our experience that students have to select the right major. If you have family members that are in the United States and you want to stay in the United States, I would not recommend marketing, for instance. It's not a STEM program. So the chances of getting H-1B for a bachelor's degree in marketing is virtually slim or nothing. It's not going to happen. So they have to start planning on their degree and then start planning on internships and co-ops right away. Of course, they have to be in the United States for 2 semesters before they can do that. But getting that first co-op job or internship is going to be the hardest class they have. But to try to get OPT without having CPT is almost impossible as well. So they have to think about all of this while they're 17 years old or 18 years old. And maybe getting good advice. If they're with Kanan, they're getting the advice. But if they're trying to do it on their own, it's so difficult to do, and it's so expensive to make a mistake now. So I think if they really plan from this day forward, working with professionals like your company is going to really help them.
Thank you. Just an extension of this question as well, probably in the student cycle, what comes next is the choice of academic programs. And in the last 5 years or so, since the pandemic, a lot has changed politically, economically, academically, all around the globe. Students in this age are quite interested in knowing about the high demand programs without even getting to know what their academic background here in their home country is. So they wish to know about the high demand academic programs, the basic academic requirements, and also the budgetary requirements before they can actually get into it. So I would request both of you to respectively answer the questions on behalf of your respective institutions.
As in the type of student we're looking to admit?
Looking to admit as from students' perspective, which would be the programs that could be high demand programs in 2025 and beyond, and what are the generic academic requirements for undergrad and grad programs?
Part of my answer to that is we should all be lifelong learners, you know, because what's a hot market now or in the next 5 years will be different in the next 15,
True.
right? So constantly learning and wanting to learn and having a passion to learn is important. I hear myself say all the time to students, today you think you want to study X, but then you get to university and you have a professor who enlightens you about a particular topic or a particular subject, and you become interested in that. And
Right.
I know one significant difference that I've experienced traveling around the world is that the US education system does allow for that flexibility of change. For an undergraduate student who would start at my institution and perhaps want a business program, they might graduate with a computer science or a cybersecurity program after they've started some curriculum and after they've, you know, engaged with some faculty and taken some classes. And so the flexibility of movement and shifting towards an interest that they enjoy. Because yes, today can be AI. And yes, our schools, our universities have AI coursework. But you know, the future is going to change, and that adaptability is necessary. But getting an education is the foundation. Bachelor's to master's and master's to whatever it might be. So I don't know if you have an add-on to that.
It's a good point. I think that the main point to take from this is the average first-year student in America will change their mind 3 to 4 times.
And that's never changed.
And it's never changed.
Never changed.
Our third or fourth most popular major for freshmen is undecided. So that's okay. Most universities like ours, you can't even officially select a major till you have 57 credits. So we know students are going to change their mind once they get an internship. Once they start taking certain classes, they're really going to feed into it. If you want the top demand right now in the state of Michigan, because we're manufacturing, supply chain is our number one. It's a STEM program. If you look at MBAs today, MBAs that have the STEM designation are so important. While computer science, I think, is starting to get saturated in the United States, information technology in our state is still very popular and still a lot of jobs. So it really kind of depends on where you want to live, where you want to work, where you want to settle, but keep an open mind. And if you change your mind that first year, it's not going to cost you any time or money. You do it after your third year, well, mom and dad might have something to say about that. But the key is not to get trapped into something that you really don't want to do.
And I think the audience would be very surprised at the infrastructure that US schools have to help students guide their way throughout the process of investigating and throughout the process of change. Like, we have a career development office that tries to connect with students right as they come in as first-year students. And they have this program that talks about undecided. You know, I can't remember, we seem to rename it every 3 or 4 years, but it's about the undecided student. And it helps them do an assessment and an inventory of what their likes are and what their strengths are. and then what the future job market is as well. And so the future job market might be one thing, and their program of study would be looking to fit into what that future interest or career interest is. But the infrastructure that we have at our institutions to help students along the way, it's intense. It's intentional, and it's intense.
Pretty much sums up at the micro and macro levels. If I am a student, if I am a parent, then yes, it does address the concern that I have inside. Another quite important concern that a lot of students and parents, as well as a lot of service providers in this part of the world have, is concerning the submission of fraudulent documents. It is so much so that the US Embassy as well as other consulates here in India, they get in touch with the masses with the help of the leading newspapers and media houses, and they pen out an entire write-up regarding the do's and don'ts of the document submission for any category of visa application. How do you address, as as you are someone who bridges the gap between students and your institutions, how do you address these concerns to the applicants as well as their families in India?
That's a great question. And I think we've already had the US Embassy call me about documents, okay, about an admission letter, which was fraudulent. So I think the US Embassy is doing a great job of really recognizing that to begin with. But I think for me and my staff, the key is relationship building. So if I'm recruiting you and you're looking at our university, I know you. I've already seen your documents firsthand. I know the representative that you're working with. So we have a high degree of confidence that what we're getting is real. When a student submits something out of the blue without going through an agency, we get suspect right away, okay? And then there's little things that we can do in our evaluation process that we can kind of pick out when things are not right. But it is a huge problem. And it's becoming more of a problem because I think students are getting more desperate and wanting to go, whether it's the United States or Canada or Australia. They're trying to fit into that mold that they think we want to look at.
Yeah.
And if they really just be themselves,
Right.
they're okay.
Right.
They just panic a little bit.
Right. I love working with Kanan is gives me a sense of comfort because I know you verify documentations, you have relationships with local banks, you have, to look at documentation, and that's a safeguard. Now, that's one safeguard that I have in working with students who work with your agency. And that comes with the decades of experience, of the association the company being around. So that's one thing. On the we have ways too. I happen to have a former police detective who does our operations team, and he will notice certain things in documents. But if it comes to that, the students unfortunately are denied immediately. If they had their admissions will be rescinded if it's discovered that they had supplied false documents. But it's not necessary, to your point, it's not necessary. A student presents themselves with full disclosure and authentic documentations, and it makes life a lot easier for everyone. In that regard. Yeah.
They just need to understand the cost. If they go to a university and they're not prepared, their parents have paid 25, 35, 40,000 USD. And
Absolutely,
for a student then not to be successful, sometimes it's all the family's money.
It is painful.
It's gone.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Next question could be comfortable, could be a bit uncomfortable, because that question very much stems up from what's been going around in the media, in the international media, for the last 12 months or so, and that is a new entry into the White House. Especially in this part of the world, we've been glued to all the media resources that we have. Trump 2.0 brings in a lot of excitement, lot of anxiety, lot of questions, and even what we read here in media is that universities are also becoming extra calculative with the new administration. So as far as the international student recruitment is concerned, the international students per se are concerned, what are the things that they need to keep in mind with the new administration now in the US?
Well, we're all in transition with this, with this experience. I almost move the politics aside and when I'm talking to families, like even today, and the students, and I say, if you have a goal and you have a desire, work towards it. You know, if you want to go to Australia or Canada or the US to study, do your investigations into the program. Think about what is going to be a good degree for you to study, back to what we've already said, and work through the application process and give it some time. You know, we're in transition on what's happening at home. I think you might be surprised that we have professional organizations that are advocating for the international student, you know, NAFSA, AIRC, US Coalition Schools, and so on. So, you know, we are looking all for the best interests of the students, and we are here. We are physically here. So we still have open doors, you know, and open interests in dialoguing with students who want to come to our universities. And we're not the only US institutions who are here. So we are continuing to welcome the international population to our universities.
Yeah, I would agree. And, you know, I look back to what happened his first 4 years, and really for our jobs, not much changed. Okay. Probably the biggest thing I think is that he didn't hire anybody. So the visa wait times really got extended. But outside of that, really nothing changed. There is still no discussion, at least publicly, about limiting the number of visas being accepted. I think because we've done it for so many years, we can already kind of know when a student's going to be a good candidate and probably not a very good candidate. And I think, you know, for me, when Joe Biden was president, the U.S. Embassy here in India said, look, Vic, we want schools to stop accepting students that they know are not going to get a visa. But really, there was no talk about that was a Joe Biden or a Donald Trump idea. So we are operating as if Barack Obama was still president. It really doesn't matter to us. If some policy changes, like they have in Canada, like they have in Australia, well, we're going to be the first to know because it's going to directly impact our offices. But by and large, I wouldn't worry too much about it.
Yeah, and the conversation at home is all of, you know, the illegal immigrant, whoever. And an international student who's coming on a visa, they are in the country safe and sound and secure. You know, they've been vetted. So that's, you know, aside from that, like we say, business as usual. Yeah.
I mean, yes, that is how we have deciphered that transition here at our end, because as far as we've heard, all the presidents up until now, at least my generation has been aware of the US presidents right since the time of Bill Clinton. So, I mean, in these 26, 27, 28 years, we haven't heard of any US president not sounding too affirmative of the international students coming to the US. They all have been too positive with the international students. Probably the only thing that has resurfaced now is the entry into the US on a very legal basis. It needs to be legitimate, and that is correct, right? It doesn't matter if the student is coming from India or any other country for that matter. As long as that is legal, I doubt if the administration in US could have any problems with that. Lastly, my question again boils down to our question number 1. It is very much an extension of it. So whenever a student is planning to study in the US, they are certainly looking at a particular degree of investment, that is financial and otherwise. They are going to invest 2 to 5 years of their lives. There is a certain degree of financial investment that goes into it. Parents invest their trust, their money and everything behind that particular child. What would your best piece of advice be to these students to make sure that they can get the maximum ROI, the maximum return on investment with their academics in the US?
I mean, that's a question domestically, internationally, every parent asks. It's the same thing. What is the ROI? What is that return on investment? And I think that really starts with selecting the right school. By that, I mean there's so many top universities around the world. Select the university that you can afford, that your personal finances, you can afford to do it. Because it's not a 1-year investment, it's a 4-year investment. Maybe it's a 5-year investment. So parents have to look at that large amount of money. We did as parents, okay? I've got twins. So twins going to universities.
Twins.
Well, see that?
I didn't know that.
Yes.
Ah.
Was huge factor in where my sons went to school. They went to where I went to school, where I was working, so free tuition, but I still had to pay housing. So that tuition is just a small part of it. Living expenses, personal expenses, health insurance, all of that comes into it. So parents have to really make an educated decision on where they're going to send their student. East Coast, West Coast in the United States, very expensive to live. Midwest, not quite as much excitement as East Coast, West Coast, okay, but cheaper to live. So students and parents have to really make that connection on where they want to go.
Yeah, I always say, again, whether I'm at home in the United States or I'm here, my tag comment is it's a puzzle, right? The student is a puzzle to me, and with every piece of information that comes in, I meet them here. They come and they visit campus maybe. I review their application. I learn a little bit about them. So the puzzle becomes more clear. The same for the student looking at my university or any university. It's confusing with a couple puzzle pieces of information that they know, and then they do the research and they put it together. And if both puzzles match, by the time you're ready to make the decision, then there's the comfort level. And to go back to the comment about 4 years or so, I think the 4-year investment is one reason why the graduate programming has been more fluid, with international students coming for graduate degree programs. So that door is open as well, 1 year, 2 year, maybe 3 years, but usually less than 2 to do a graduate degree program. So some students might have to wait. They'll do their undergrad and then they'll come to the US for their grad. And that can be diversified as well. So I tell students all the time, like, you can study a degree in pharmaceutical, for example, in a bachelor's degree, but then go for a master's in maybe even cybersecurity or maybe supply chain management. Who knows? That can happen. Streams of change can happen. So it's different opportunities.
Yes, so more or less, students, that sums up our interaction with the two very special guests that we've had for today. They are very much a part of the Education Expo that we have for 2 days here at Anand and Vadodara in the year of 2025. To be honest, this conversation stays with me for long because I hear it from someone who has invested behind the education of their twins, and they know pretty much the in and out of the education ecosystem in the US. With vast and enormous decade-long experience that you guys have, I am quite certain that your inputs and your insights would certainly help the aspirants who are planning to study in the US in the years to come. I would want to extend my warmest possible thanks to both of you for taking your valuable times out, and possibly we get to connect soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.